Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Heather, and this is Heather Travels. And today we are doing another live question and answer chat. And the focus of today's live Q&A is going to be international travel. And the reason I chose this topic for today's live stream is because our next trip is a trip to Europe and the UK. And I'll tell you quickly here at the beginning, kind of the general overview of what our trip's going to be. It's me and Megan and Ben, and we're going to be flying nonstop from Minneapolis to Paris. And then we're going to be spending a few days in Paris. And then we're going to be taking the TGV high-speed rail from Paris to Switzerland. And we're going to Lucerne, Switzerland. And we're going to be doing some things in Switzerland. And basically that portion of the trip is to kind of make up to Megan her France and Switzerland trip that she was supposed to take 2 years ago with her high school group that she didn't get to go on because it got canceled because of the pandemic. And then we're going to be taking the train all the way to London, which is what's shown behind me. We're going to be taking the TGV back to Paris and then getting on the Eurostar, which is the train that goes under the English Channel in the tunnel underneath, and taking the Eurostar to London. And then we're going to be spending a week in London. And then we're going to be flying back to the United States, but we're not flying directly home. We're going to be flying to Boston and seeing my son Andrew, who lives out there, and also going to see a show that I have been wanting to see. We are seeing several shows. We're seeing 3 shows on this trip. We have tickets to 3 different shows. We're seeing Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, both parts in London. We're seeing Come From Away in London, and we're seeing Anastasia in Boston. And those are 3 shows that I've been very much looking forward to seeing, and just have to go to different cities to see them. So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to be doing. And this is going to be Megan and Ben's first trip to Europe. Neither of them have ever been there before. My oldest son, Andrew, I took to London when he was 10. And then he went on a France trip with his high school, just like Megan was going to do when it was the summer between his junior and senior year of high school. And then he did 2 study abroads in college. Both of them were traveling study abroads. And he went to Morocco, Belgium, and France, all French-speaking countries, in 2018, I think it was. And then in 2019, he went to Italy to finish up his history minor, and went to several different places in Italy. And then I studied abroad twice, once in high school and once in college. In high school, I lived with a family in a homestay program and was going to classes about Irish history and culture. And that was in 1989. And I lived in Ireland in a suburb of Dublin. And then in college, I spent a semester in London. And so London is one of my favorite cities. And that's kind of our international travel background with going to Europe and everything. So if you have any questions for the chat, go ahead and put them in the chat. And otherwise, I had a whole bunch of questions submitted ahead of time. And I'm going to, until we get some questions in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and tackle some of these. So if you think of anything or you have any questions, and it doesn't have to be about international travel, if you just have any questions at all that you want me to answer in the Q&A today, go ahead and leave those in the chat. Okay, so the first one I want to tackle, because this is kind of a big one and also very important. What steps do you feel are important in preparing for international travel that people who rarely or never travel internationally may not realize are needed? Now, when they wrote me this question, they also said, other than the obvious, like getting a passport. And I would argue that that isn't necessarily obvious to some people. Getting a passport is a whole big, very important step in international travel. Hope you can hear me okay. My mic is... but if I get too close, then my head is huge. I like to sit back a little bit. Okay. I made a whole video. It's a pretty long video, and you can find it on my channel. It's called Passport Nightmares, and it's all about getting a passport. And I specifically talk about the complexity of getting a passport for your minor children, which I'm going to be facing again soon because my kids' passports are expiring. Well, Andrew's, he's 25 years old, so this isn't an issue, but Megan and Ben's passports, I got them at the same time, so they're on the same schedule. But now Megan's going to be on a different schedule because she's 18 now. So she doesn't even need me anymore to get a passport. She's an adult. She can get her own passport. Hers isn't a problem. But when they were younger, and for Ben now, again, he's not 16 yet. And when your kids are under 16, they're technically supposed to have both parents with them when they get their passport, when they apply for their passport. You have to appear in person to apply for their passport with both parents. And for a lot of parents, in a lot of situations, including mine, because I don't know where their father is, that's a very complicated issue and can prevent people from being able to get their child a passport. The last time I got their passports, I had to go through the process of special circumstances. There's a special form that you can fill out if you have special circumstances. And then there's a whole process that you have to go through to still be able to get the passports for your kids, which I was able to do. And so hopefully I don't have any trouble getting Ben his new passport again now. Their passports don't expire until March, but that brings up a very important point. You always want to have at least 6 months of validity remaining on your passport when you travel. Many countries will not allow you to travel there if you don't have at least 6 months left on your passport. There's at least 6 months until it expires. And so since their passports are expiring in March, 6 months prior to that would be September. So that's why I was very eager to make sure we got to do this trip to Europe this summer. Not only that, but because Megan's leaving for college, was because I don't want to run into a passport problem. Because one of the things, I just read an article again this morning, passports are taking a very long time. The agencies the passport agencies and the passport offices at the beginning of the pandemic were closed. And so they weren't processing any passport applications. And now they have a huge backlog. And then they had a problem like last year where they stopped taking, you're no longer able to schedule urgent passport appointments if you have to travel very soon and you need your passport right away. You used to be able to schedule those online, but evil people who want money were taking up all the appointments and then reselling them to people at a huge price. And that was messing up the whole system. And so the State Department just took it down. And so now the only way you can schedule one of those appointments is to call, and you have to prove that you have imminent travel scheduled. And it's taking forever, and it's not working like it's supposed to at all. And I saw that the courier services that they use for like expedited passports and everything is just a mess. Things are not as quick as they are supposed to go. And so if you need a passport, you need to apply for it right now. Go apply for it right now. You need to apply for it way before you think you're going to need it, because it could take months to get that passport. So just be aware of that. Passports is not an easy thing at all, especially today. Somebody said getting visas. Let me put this up. Getting visas for countries can be a real pain. India now allows electronic visa, which helps a great deal. That's good to know. There's probably other countries like that too. Yeah, always check for your particular country if you need a visa. That's a separate thing than a passport. And not every country requires them. One thing, again, about Europe, starting next year in 2023, Americans are going to need a visa to go to the EU, or is it Schengen countries? I'm not sure what it is, but it's not going to be hard to get, and it's not very expensive. It's like less than $10 or something like that. But that's important that you research ahead of time and make sure you have the visa that you need to enter the country that you want to visit. So that's something else that people need to think about. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, another thing and you might think this is just a right now thing, but this is not just a right now thing. This is as old as travel itself. You need to make sure you have all your required vaccinations. My son went to Morocco in North Africa in 2018. That's before the pandemic, but he had to get shots that are required. Yep, that's what I was just saying. And Southeast Asia, a lot of countries are going to require, most of Africa, you're going to need certain vaccinations. This is not just COVID vaccines. That's why people arguing, I shouldn't have to have vaccines for travel or I shouldn't have to have vaccines. Baloney. They've been requiring vaccines for travel since vaccines have existed. And there was a smallpox vaccine back as far as George Washington ordered smallpox vaccination on his troops back in the 1700s. That's how long there's been vaccine requirements. So if you think that vaccine requirements are something new or something strange, they are not at all. There used to be these yellow cards that you had to have for travel that you had all your vaccinations on. You have to have certain vaccines for certain countries. If you don't know what vaccines you need, go to the State Department's website, look at travel. There's a whole travel section on the State Department's website. It's state.gov. And if you're a U.S. citizen, or look at your own country's State Department travel website, or look at the tourism website for the country that you're visiting. And somewhere on there, you should be able to find what vaccines you need to be able to visit there. Now, in a lot of cases in most industrialized parts of the world, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, if you live in one of those countries already, it's not going to be anything more than what you would have gotten in your normal routine vaccinations, like as a kid. But in a lot of countries, there are other vaccines, yellow fever, things like that. So there's a whole bunch of other ones that you might need. There are places called travel clinics where you can go. They're not a separate clinic. They're just like a department in a bigger hospital clinic system where they will have those specialized vaccines that you need. I would be prepared too. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing that they're going to start requiring monkeypox vaccination. They are going to rename that, by the way. They find the name to be prejudicial. The name is old. And so in addition to COVID vaccinations, you might start to see that you might need to get what they're using for monkeypox is actually a variety of the smallpox vaccine. So just watch for that. You always have to check and make sure you have the vaccines that you need. I ran into a nightmare with this upcoming trip, and it turned out not to be a problem, but it was very difficult to find the good tip here. In Orlando, they had an excellent travelers vaccination clinic. They had everything. Yep, we have one here in our neighboring town too. We have a Mayo Clinic where we live. Mayo Clinic out of Rochester, Minnesota is also in the town like where we live, and they have an excellent travel clinic here too. So yeah, just look around for a good hospital clinic system near you, and you should be able to find a travel clinic, no problem. And they will know everything you need. If you just call the travel clinic and say, hey, I'm going to Thailand or I'm going to Kenya or whatever, they're going to know what shots you need and they can make an appointment for you and all that. But with the COVID vaccines, the Schengen region in Europe is not allowing you, some countries, it's really short. If you've only had first of all, if you haven't had any COVID vaccine at all, forget about it. You're not going to be able to travel internationally. You have to get vaccinated. This is not an option. I don't care what your reasons are for why you're not getting vaccinated. If you want to travel internationally, you have to get vaccinated. You can't cruise if you're not vaccinated. You can't travel to other countries if you're not vaccinated. There is no place you can go if you're not vaccinated for COVID. So if you plan on leaving the country, you have to be vaccinated. That's just a given. But in a lot of places, the U.S., and right before I got on this live stream, the U.S. is very slow in approving the next stage of the process. I am fuming right now. I am 35 days away from turning 50. And neither the pharmacy where I got all 3 of my first COVID vaccine shots, or my own doctor would not give me my 4th shot, my 2nd booster, which they won't give it to you until you're 50. And I thought that was ridiculous. I'm like, I'm going to be out of the country when I'm 50. Don't you want me to be protected? They wouldn't give it to me. I was livid. And it's because the FDA and the CDC are so slow to approve the next stage of the process. And that's a problem we're having in the United States with the whole approach to the pandemic. Don't get me started. But I mean, I was absolutely furious. This was just on Tuesday that this happened. And I feel vulnerable now because it's been over 9 months since I had my first booster. And in those countries I was mentioning in Europe, you can't enter those countries if it's been over 270 days. In some countries, it's as short as 90 days. Malta is 90 days. Belgium is 150 days. If you've only had the primary series of the COVID vaccine and you have not gotten a booster, and it's over that long since you had your primary series, which for most people probably is, they're not going to let you in. And my doctor was like, well, I can write you a note. And I'm like, they don't care if I have a note. They want me to have the shot. Now, I thought that it was 270 days since any last shot and that I wasn't going to be able to get into France and Switzerland. I really had to dig because the information on the State Department's website was not clear. The information on the French Health Ministry's website was not clear. I even called the French embassy in Washington, D.C. and asked. She actually said I was okay, but I was still nervous because I couldn't I should have probably just talked to her in French, but she said, no, you're good. But I was like, are you sure? And then I finally dug and found an article that it was only 270 days after your initial series. They consider your vaccine expired. If it's been more than 9 months since you got your second shot or your first shot, if it was Johnson & Johnson, your vaccine is considered expired in most countries. So if you haven't gotten a booster, they don't consider you vaccinated anymore. I was worried that it was if it had been 9 months since I got my last shot, which was my first booster, but that's not the case. So I'm still okay. I still would feel a lot better if I had gotten my second booster. And you can be darn sure I'm going to go and get it as soon as I get back because I'll be 50 then. But watch, while I'm gone, I'll bet you money. While I'm gone, the FDA gets it together and approves it for all adults 18 and up. You watch the second booster. I'll bet you money on it. So that's another thing is vaccines. Okay. Another thing that I think people don't think about is money when they travel internationally. Make sure you know what the currency is in the country that you're visiting. We're going to need 3 different types of currency on this trip. The euro, which is used in a lot of Europe, but not all of it. Not every country is part of the EU. Only the countries that are part of the EU use euros. Norway doesn't use the euro. Switzerland doesn't use the euro. Switzerland uses Swiss francs. And the UK is on British pounds. So I'm going to need 3 different currencies when I go on this trip. So that's something very important. Make sure you know what the currency is that you're going to need for your trip internationally, and make sure you account for that in factoring in how much money you're going to need, in budgeting and planning how much money you need, like for hotels and food and all of that thing, transportation. And I always like to have a little bit of cash in the currency of the country that I'm traveling to when I go. So if I get there in the middle of the night, or I'm too tired and I just want to crash in my hotel right away, or I need money for a taxi or whatever, it's always a good idea to have a little bit of cash with you. And we are lucky that we have a travel agency near us that keeps foreign currency on hand. You have to go there and get it in person, and you have to pay for it in cash. So they don't have Swiss francs. I called them. They're going to need about 3 days. Was it 3 days?
Yeah.
For the Swiss francs? Yeah. They have pounds and they have euros, but they're going to need a little advance notice for the francs. So I'm going to need to go do that just to get a little bit of each kind of money so that I have some in my hand when I go. I mean, even just the simplest thing. What if somebody helps you with your bags? You want to be able to tip them or something right away. It's nice to have some money when you first get there. Another thing is the time zones and jet lag. That's something that you can prepare for a little bit. We're planning on gradually a little bit each night in the week or 2 before we leave, moving our bedtime earlier and getting up earlier in the morning. We've already kind of started because it's a difference of 6 hours, and we want to make sure that we're not, you'll be so tired. Going east is always harder. Going west isn't so bad, but going east is harder. Oh yeah, this is a good tip too. If you lock your debit card and normally unloading it on your phone, you may not have internet connectivity to do that abroad. Unlock your card. I'm not sure what cruising for one means by this. Lock your debit card. I've never heard of that. I don't know. Can you clarify that? But this brings up a good point about using your phone abroad. We have, it brings up 2 good points. One is your cards, your credit cards and your debit card. You want to check with the issuing bank and make sure that those are going to be okay to use, that they know that you're traveling and they're not going to put a hold on it. Because that's happened to me quite a bit. Even when I was buying tickets for things that we're going to be doing over there, my credit card companies were denying the transactions. My bank was, because they're like, wait, well, why are they buying things in France? They're not in France. So you can lock it with your bank app. Okay, I see. And then with your phone, most people don't automatically have international, like for using data. You don't want to, basically the advice that I've always given my son when he's traveled without me to Europe is keep it in airplane mode. Just like if you're on a cruise, keep it in airplane mode. If you happen to be somewhere with free Wi-Fi, your hotel, a restaurant, great. You can still use it just like you could on the cruise ship. You're not going to be able to make calls, and you're not going to be able to do texting. But you could use, Facebook Messenger or whatever if you need to communicate with someone. I do have a day pass on all of our phones, my phone and all three of my kids' phones. It's an international day pass. It's $10 a day. It only charges us if we use the phone to make a call or send a text that particular day. And it's a maximum of $100. So the maximum it would use is, if I used my phone 12 days, it's only going to charge me for 10. So it's unlikely. I don't think Andrew's ever used it. And it's unlikely, unless we got separated from each other and couldn't somehow otherwise communicate with each other, and we had to make a phone call. That would be the only time we would need it. But it's good to have on there, because if you don't have that, then it's going to be a lot more than $10 to make that phone call. So, but otherwise, I think of it just like cruising. We keep our phones in airplane mode the whole time and just use Wi-Fi. So, and we have a VPN. We use NordVPN to protect so like I can still do banking and do stuff with my YouTube channel and things when I'm traveling, because we have a VPN, which is a virtual private network, that protects our internet when we're using public Wi-Fi. So that's something you might want to consider too, if you're going to be doing anything that you wouldn't want somebody to be able to hack into or stuff like that. To protect yourself, is consider a VPN. Surfshark is another good one. So those are some things that you want to think about with preparing to travel internationally. Okay, I don't think any other questions have come in. Let me go back to the other ones. All right. This one's a little different. This kind of goes to cruising, and cruising is international travel. Somebody asked, if I'm going off of a cruise ship, should I take my actual passport or should I take a copy of my passport? And when I got this question, I realized that when we were on our last cruise, I didn't take either. We got off the ship and I didn't take anything with us. Now, I didn't even think about it. I had the passports with us. They were in the safe in our stateroom. But here's the thing. When we got off in St. Thomas, we didn't need them. St. Thomas is part of the United States. St. Thomas is the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I don't know if maybe I had thought about that and already knew that. I didn't need my passport in St. Thomas. St. Thomas is the United States. Now, if we had gotten off the ship in St. Kitts, then we might have wanted to take, because that's the Netherlands, St. Kitts is. The Caribbean is confusing. You need to figure out what country that island you're visiting belongs to, okay? But like Puerto Rico, you wouldn't need your passport in Puerto Rico either, because if you're American, because that's part of the United States. It's a United States territory. But if you're getting off in Jamaica, then you would. Okay, the only reason you're going to need your passport when you get off a cruise ship is if you get stuck there. If the ship won't let you back on, or you miss the ship and you're stuck in the place where you are, well then yes, you definitely want to have your passport with you. So I guess my answer to this question is, if you think you're going to get stuck there, if there's any possibility you might get stuck there, then take the actual passport. But otherwise, I don't even know that you need a copy of your passport, really. Your driver's license is sufficient. I mean, it's the only thing I can think you're going to need ID for if you're just off the cruise ship for the day, like going on a shore excursion or something, is if you need to buy a drink or something. I mean, or you're going to rent a car. I mean, there's not a lot of reason you should need it. If you're on a ship shore excursion, I really don't think you're going to need it, because the ship shore excursions, they're guaranteeing that the ship's going to wait for you and you're going to get back on the ship. So there isn't any real reason that you should need it there. However, I would give the overall advice of it's always better to have a passport when you travel by cruise ship rather than just taking your birth certificate. Because we've seen in the news recently, there was a cruise ship that, is it the one that went aground? Something, or they had engine trouble or something, and a cruise ship couldn't get back. The ship itself broke down and could not get the passengers back to where they started. And so all those passengers that had cruised on that cruise with just their birth certificates now were stuck in the country that they were in with no passport, and it was a big, huge mess. So I just always advise that you always have a passport, and whenever you travel internationally, including cruising, have your passport with you. Now, in that scenario, I'm sure they let the people back on the ship to get their passports if they had them with them. But yeah, I mean, unless you're worried, you're going off on your own and you think there's a chance that you might not get back to the ship in time, then you might want to take it with you. But otherwise, your passport's probably safer in the safe, if that makes sense. Okay. How do you research possible places of interest for other countries? Is there a favorite site you use? No, there's not any one favorite site. I'm reading travel stuff all the time. Travel is my job now in my life, and I spend an enormous amount of time reading about travel, and I just love the world and have a huge list of places that I want to see. When I decide to go to an actual place, like I'll give you an example. I was deciding to go to Switzerland. Well, I knew where Megan's trip that she was supposed to go on was supposed to go, but I decided I didn't want to do that. I'll tell you how I decided. The Amazing Race. We love The Amazing Race. The TV show, I've watched every single episode of every single season of The Amazing Race since it first came on. I started watching it with Andrew when Andrew was in first grade, and it's been on ever since, and now I watch it with these kids. And I've applied for The Amazing Race twice, have not gotten on. I would love to do The Amazing Race with one of my kids. The Amazing Race goes all over the world, and they go to a whole bunch of amazing places, and I get a whole bunch of cool ideas of places I want to visit from The Amazing Race. And movies, books. I mean, anytime I read about a place, or I read a lot and I go to a lot of movies or see a place, I'm like, oh, I'd really like to go there. And then I research it. We're going to Lucerne in Switzerland. They went there on The Amazing Race twice. And so I recognize things in it as I'm researching. And then I guess once I've decided on a destination, I will research the destination. Like, what are the top 10 things to do in this place? And you're going to get a good list of things. And then you can research each thing individually and kind of find out about it, the prices, and is this something I really want to do, stuff like that. But no, there's not any one site. The world is too big and there's too much to do. Okay. Is there anything that you handle differently with international travel versus domestic travel? Yes, and I kind of talked about that already with the first question, with things like passports, visas, currency, vaccinations, money, your phone. All of those are considerations. Yeah, I know what you're talking about too, cruising for one. Okay. As far as like for planning, I mean, you're going to have much more significant travel time, obviously, to get there. I'm not sure what else I would consider differently. I mean, there's a lot of, it's a different place, but that's kind of too broad to answer because each place is going to be different than each other place too. So other than what I already talked about, I'm not sure that there's a really good answer to that. What's the best way to get around in Europe? And would you ever feel like you need to get a car? I'm going to say right away, train. The rail system in Europe is far superior to anything we have in the United States. Trains are clean, fast, modern, and on time in the United States, in Europe. I cannot say that about the United States. None of them. Clean, not fast, not safe, not on time, not modern. So, I mean, maybe like the new Acela trains on the East Coast, and like new things they're building, like the Brightline in Florida or the new high-speed rail they're building in California. But the U.S. is so far behind the rest of the world on rail service. It's scary. There's a lot of low-cost airlines in Europe that can easily, quickly, and cheaply get you from place to place in Europe. However, I find that I still prefer rail travel in Europe for two reasons. One is it's less of an environmental impact. It's better for the earth if we travel by train than if we travel on planes. Secondly, is the location of train stations is usually smack dab in the center of most European cities and very convenient. You can walk out of the train station and walk to a hotel across the street and get on public transit in that city. It's very convenient. Whereas airports are usually, in most cases, on the outskirts of cities and are a little bit more difficult to get to, just like they are here in the United States. So just from a convenience factor, I think trains are far better. Would I ever rent a car? Just like in the United States, there's a lot of places you can't get to unless you have a car. But they also have a far more extensive and public transportation system in Europe than they do here. And you can get on a train pretty close to almost everything. And then they have all the same things: taxi, rideshare, buses, tours. You could get to most things without renting a car in Europe. But if you wanted to do like a road trip, it wouldn't be my preference, but lots of people do that. I mean, one of my favorite YouTube channels is Camper Vibe, which is two women that they're a couple that are traveling to the top of Norway right now. They're from the UK and they're traveling to the top of Norway in their converted camper van with their dog and their cat. And I mean, they have a great time and they like that lifestyle. It's not for me, but lots of people do it. I mean, if you watch their videos, there's tons and tons of people traveling just like them all over Europe. Same as in Australia. During the pandemic, when Australia was locked down tight and nobody could leave or get into Australia, Australians, one of our other favorite vlogs that Ben and I both watch is Flying the Nest. Stephen and Jess and their little girl Hunter, they couldn't travel internationally during the pandemic. They're Australian, and so they converted a Sprinter van and did the entire perimeter of Australia in a year. So there's, public transportation in Europe is fantastic. The public bus in Paris is a fantastic way to see the city. Yeah, I mean, people who've never been there don't understand, but the difference between public transportation in Europe and in a lot of big cities throughout the world and the United States, it's just the United States is a joke for public transportation. There's exceptions. There's some cities where public transportation is very good in the United States. But like as far as connecting cities to each other here, it's very bad. It's very poor in the United States, and it's much, much easier to get around. There's so many trains in Europe. It's just really a lot easier. Okay. Someone asked, how do you check for safety issues? And Cruising for One answered that. The State Department website. Yep. The State Department website has all the travel advisory and yes, and also the travel insurance. I recently purchased annual travel insurance for the first time, and I think I'll probably go with that for going forward. It's going to be more economical for me. And also annual travel insurance covers COVID, whereas individual travel insurance plans usually do not, unless you pay a lot of extra money. So I paid about $450 for an annual family travel insurance policy for the three of us. And that will cover however many trips we take in a year from, I think I got it July 1st to July 1st. And I'll probably keep getting a new one going forward, because if you take more than like 3 trips a year, it's probably more cost effective. And like Cruising for One was saying, your app that comes with, Alliance, who I have my annual travel insurance, they have an app and they will have travel. If you tell them where you're going, they'll like give you alerts and stuff about the places you're going. But the State Department's website and the CDC's website, actually, for health stuff, both have a list of advisories for safety issues and health issues. Okay. Did I miss any questions? All right. What has been your favorite international travel destination so far, and what made visiting that place so special to you? It was kind of brief, but I loved going to Vienna. I went to Vienna at Christmas time, and I'd really like to go back. I'd really like to do a Christmas markets river cruise on the Danube that goes to Vienna, because just that little taste, that little glimpse I got of Vienna when I was there, I was visiting a friend. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. They were literally roasting chestnuts in a barrel on the street corners. And it was just so neat. It was snowing and it was just magical and so pretty. I would really like to go back there. A Danube river cruise is very high on my wish list, but they're very expensive. So that's something I'd really like to do, and see all of those cities on a river cruise. And then probably London. I just love London, but I lived there for an extended time. So I got to spend a lot of time there, and I've been back twice since then. And I just absolutely love London. Paris is my favorite city of all time, but in watching all the vlogs on Norway, I'd love to go. I know, right? Norway looks just stunning. I can't wait to go to Norway. I have a Norwegian cruise booked for my birthday next year. And I'm going to be announcing this. Next week's live stream Q&A is on Disney Cruise Line. So if you or someone you know has a particular interest in Disney Cruise Line, be sure to join me next week for my Q&A on Disney Cruise Line. Now, the reason I originally had that scheduled is because we were going to do a Disney cruise this year for my 50th birthday, and we decided not to do that. And the reasons we decided not to do that was, number one, it made our trip, it was going to be literally back to back with our Europe trip. And it's a long story and I don't want to get into it right now. I'm still not happy about it. I really, really, really wanted to take a cruise for my 50th birthday. And I'm actually extremely sad that I'm not going to be doing that. But I changed it to a same ship, the Disney Dream, next year on my birthday in Norwegian, for the Norwegian fjords. And I'm actually really, except I just remembered something. I said I didn't want to do the Norwegian fjords until we could go up above the North Pole, and I don't think that one does it. Dang it. I'm having a lot of trouble right now. A whole bunch of my plans got messed up, and I'm really frustrated. But yeah, Norway looks stunning, and I'm actually, I'm doubting myself again. Darn it. I'm having a hard time right now. Nothing's worked out the way I really wanted it to. We really wanted to go to Europe in July, and then I wanted to do a cruise for my birthday in August, and it hasn't worked out that way, and I'm actually really frustrated. And it's cost me a lot of extra money. And anyway, has that happened to anyone else? Have your plans got messed up and then you're frustrated and doubting yourself? Yeah. My first cruise was Disney Cruise Line too. It was on the Disney Magic in 2001, and it was with my son when he was 4 years old, and I just love Disney Cruise Line. And your daughter and family are going on the Wish. When are they going? We're waiting a little bit on that. Like, this cruise on the Dream that we were going to take next month was going to be my first time on either the Dream or the Fantasy. So those ships have been out for a while now, but when they're new, they're very popular. It's very hard to get a booking on the Wish right now. So yeah, join me next week if you want to talk about Disney Cruise Line though. Okay, so otherwise, I love London. Going back to my favorite destination, I love London. Okay, since overseas flights tend to be longer and across more time zones, tips for minimizing jet lag. Okay, good question. Jet lag can be awful. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. When I was married, my husband and I went to London with my then 10-year-old son. And most flights from where we live in the United States, usually, you leave in the evening. You leave dinner time or a little later, depending on where you are in the United States. Our flight going to Paris soon is the same thing. We leave at like 4 o'clock and we get there at 7 o'clock the next morning. But it's not that many hours because you cross multiple time zones. So I told Andrew when we were on that flight when he was 10 that it was really important that he go to sleep and sleep on the plane. And he listened to me, and he and I both slept on the plane. My husband was so excited because this was the first time he had ever, this was 2007, I think. It was the first time he'd ever been on a plane where they had the in-flight entertainment in the back of the seats. He'd never been on a flight that had that before. And he was so excited by that he stayed up the entire flight watching movies on the flight. And when we got to London, he was so tired. He literally kept saying, I feel like I'm going to die. He was so tired. He could barely function. And I said, I told you to sleep on the plane. You didn't listen to me. And I also remember when my mom and I went to Paris, we did it right. We forced ourselves to stay awake. We went to the hotel, and I don't think we could get into our room right away. So, but they took our bags for us. And then we walked to Notre Dame because we weren't very far from Notre Dame Cathedral. And so we walked to Notre Dame, it was like midday because you get in early in the morning. And then we went somewhere, a little cafe, and we had lunch. And by the time we ate lunch, so this is, let's say it's noon Paris time. Well, that's 7 hours ahead of my time here. So that was like 5 a.m. for me back home. And I'd been awake since what would have been like 1 a.m. Okay. And I remember I was leaning against the wall in the cafe we were in, and I was falling asleep against the wall because you're so tired. And then we did go back to the hotel after we ate lunch, and then we took a nap, but we were a little bit annoyed with ourselves because we slept too long. If you take a nap when you get to the city that you're visiting with jet lag, keep it short and try to get on the schedule of the city that you're going to, the place that you're going to, as quickly as possible. So even if you have to, force yourself to stay up and then go to bed at 6 o'clock and then just sleep and then wake up at the normal time the next day, and then you'll be good after that. So that's the trick to it, I really feel, is to try to get on the time zone that you're visiting as fast as you possibly can. And like I said earlier in the live, if you can try to edge your, if you're going east like we are, if you can try to edge yourself forward with your sleeping a little bit. So for example, for us, that means we're going to go to bed earlier each night and get up earlier each day for a week or so before we go, to try to get on that schedule ahead of time. That can help too. The other thing is to make sure you're staying hydrated, both on the plane and when you get there. Drink plenty of water so you don't get like headaches and stuff from the jet lag. Otherwise, I've never had a terrible time with it. I usually adjust within a day or so. So those would be my tips for you. Okay. Oh, that sounds great. Doing a 14-day, 7-day back-to-back on Caribbean Princess in a suite for A6. Oh, that sounds so great. I'm still, now I'm regretting. I wish I had, I'll tell you the thing with the reason we changed the cruise is because we didn't like the back-to-back coming straight back from Europe and then going on the cruise. And we were really uneasy about having to test in the middle of all that. We'd have to test while we were, good tip. We'd have to test while we were traveling. And we waited to book the Europe trip until they dropped the testing requirement to come back into the United States. So the way things are going with the virus, I sure as heck hope they don't add that back on while we're over there or something. Oh, by the way, you have to have a test to get back. Maybe I better take some tests with us just in case. Yes, also good tip. Try not to have alcohol on the plane. I don't drink alcohol, so that's not a problem for me. But yeah, if you do drink alcohol, don't drink alcohol on the plane when you're traveling to avoid jet lag, because that's just going to make it worse. Yeah, good tip. Okay, I think I went through all of the questions that people submitted ahead of time. Yeah, okay. And nobody else has submitted anything. So actually, you know what? I'm going to go back There were a couple of older questions that people submitted in on Instagram or in the comments on my community tab on my Facebook page that I was going to save for a Q&A at the end of the month, but I'm actually getting to all of the questions in these videos. So I think I'm probably not going to do that video actually, because if I answer them all and there aren't any left for me to catch up on. So there's 3 of them. Yeah, 3 of them. First one, how are you going to combat traveling when one of your children will be in college? Okay, well, I've already done this. I don't think a lot of my viewers realize that I have 3 kids. I don't have 2 kids, I have 3 kids. I know you only see 2 of my kids usually in my videos, and that's because I didn't start my YouTube channel until 2018. And my oldest son, Andrew, who is 25, left for college in 2015. So I have a lot of experience figuring out how to deal with travel once your kid goes off to college, because he's been gone now for 7 years. So he went to college. He was in college for 4 years. He graduated, worked for a year or 2, and now he's in law school and has relocated to the East Coast. So my son has not been with us to travel for a long, long time. And I'm actually very sad about that, because I love traveling with my son, Andrew. And we've only taken 1 trip together since he left for college in 2015. We all 4 of us went on a Disney cruise together over their spring break in 2017. Here's the problem when you have kids in college. Their breaks are not the same. It's a major problem, except for summer, obviously. But like my son now, in the summer, like right now, he has a job. He's a clerk in a law firm. So he can't take off to come with us or do anything with us. So next summer, we're supposed to go to Alaska. Fingers crossed. I don't know if I'm going to have enough money. I'm running out of money rapidly here, but and he would in June, and he would just ask ahead of time when he starts whatever summer job he has. But by the time it just didn't work out this year. But anyway, this coming spring break, for example, I have 3 kids. One's in law school, one will be in college, and one is in high school. They have 3 different spring breaks. So that stinks. So the only times, well, and then the other thing that you'll find about college and law school, Thanksgiving break, they basically don't get any time off at all. They only get off like the Thursday and the Friday, maybe the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whereas our school district, Ben, is going to have the whole week off. So that's a problem. Christmas break is another time, but my kids have always been very reluctant to want to travel at Christmas break because they like to be at home for Christmas. This year, again, fingers crossed, we do have a trip booked over Christmas, and they have all agreed to go. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that, because that would be our first time traveling all together in 5 years. So it's definitely a trick when you have a kid in college. Summer is probably your best opportunity when you have kids in college to be able to travel together as a family. But summer is hot, expensive, and places are crowded. Now, you can still have a fabulous time. I mean, we just went to Walt Disney World last week. Yeah. And over 4th of July. And we had a fabulous trip. So there's ways that you can still make it great. But yeah, you are kind of limited when you have your kids go off to college. And I am very, very sad and worried about what I'm going to do when they're all grown up and gone. And I really hope they'll still travel with me, because I have traveled alone, but I don't really I much prefer to have one of them with me to travel with me, or more of them. And so I'm not sure how that's going to go yet, but I mean, I'll always want to travel, but I don't know if I'll be able to make that adjustment to traveling by myself all the time or not. I'm trying not to think about it. Okay. And then another question was kind of along with the college thing. This was not a travel question, but what advice would you give to an upcoming freshman in college. And this was to someone who I think is starting college this fall, like my daughter is. Meg, do you have any questions on how for an ingoing freshman to college? One thing I would say is make sure you're doing all the stuff that the school tells you to do. So whatever your college tells you to do, Megan's had to do this whole incoming freshman module, which she said has been very helpful. It's been very helpful to her, and it's been very helping her feel a little bit more prepared. And it's just like an introduction to everything. And make sure that you are doing all the tasks and everything that they want you to do when they want you to do them. Make sure you visit the school at any opportunity that they give you. You know, if they have a visit day for admitted students, or they have an orientation day, or anything like that, make sure you go to all of that stuff and just enjoy your last summer at home and spending time together with your family. One thing I will tell you about going into college, don't come home right away. A lot of students are going to they're like get homesick and then they want to come home. Make yourself stay there for at least 3 weeks. And if you don't do that, you're going to kind of miss out on the making friends and bonding thing that happens right away. There's a lot of activity that happens in that first 3 to 4 weeks, that first month of college. Make sure you stay there the whole time and don't make any plans to go home on the weekend or anything until after that. And then, plan something with your family that you have to look forward to. Like we have this Christmas cruise planned. So, Megan can look forward to that. And I already have my hotel reservation for family weekend, which is at the end of September, beginning of October. So she knows we're going to be coming for that. Things like that. So they know they have something to look forward to when they're going to get to see their family. And yeah, those would be the tips that I would give to you. Okay. I felt like I missed a question. Oh, no, I guess not. Okay. And then the last one that I didn't get to was, how are you coping with inflation costs for travel? This is a really good question. Inflation is hitting everybody hard everywhere. There's really no way around it. Everything just costs more. One thing I would say is, if you know how much things cost normally, you can kind of have a good sense of whether, is this really higher than I think it should be, or is that actually just how much it costs? I hope you know what I mean by that. But we were fortunate this year in that I had this extra money from selling my house, so it wasn't as much of a concern for us. But one thing I guess I would say is that there's always, I have a whole playlist on my channel you can go check out about budgeting and stuff. There's always ways to cut down on your costs when you're traveling, and just use all those tricks to as much as you can, especially when, that's a really good tip. When hotel rates are at all-time highs, cruising is fantastic value. That's very true, because cruising is your accommodation, your meals, and your entertainment all in one price. Cruising is an excellent travel value. That's very true. The other thing I would say is, like, I've talked a lot about, the high cost of renting a car. That's been even before inflation. But like right now, I would avoid driving because fuel is so high. Another way that you can offset it, and this is what we do. A lot of people ask, like, how can we travel as much as we do? We spend very little money the rest of the time. So live very humbly and frugally and modestly. We don't buy stuff. We don't do a lot of things. We basically never leave our house the rest of the time. We, don't spend a lot of money on other things. We keep our cost of living very low because travel is so incredibly important to me. I want to have the money to be able to do that. And so if you can cut your costs in other places, if you've got expensive hobbies where you're buying a lot of stuff so you can, scrapbook or craft, or you are, buying a latte at Starbucks every day for $6, cut back on those things. There's things you could cut back on to offset inflation that you probably already are doing if inflation is hitting you hard. But that's just kind of a general rule of thumb is how you can afford more travel anyway is to cut back your expenses in other areas. And I guess just take that up a notch to help deal with inflation is what I would suggest. So, okay, did I miss any questions? I don't think so. If you were not able to join me for this week's live, thank you to those of you who did join me. I hope that I answered some of your questions and that this was helpful to you. If you were not able to join me this week, go ahead and leave your questions, and you're watching this later. Go ahead and leave your questions down below in the comments, and I will answer those questions for you in the comments. And again, I think I'm not going to do that. I've answered all the questions that I had submitted ahead of time. We still have one more live Q&A scheduled for next Saturday. That is July 23rd at this same time. And we're going to be focusing on Disney Cruise Line. So if you are at all interested in Disney Cruise Line, if you love Disney Cruise Line, if you've always wanted to go on Disney Cruise Line, or you're curious about Disney Cruise Line or anything about that, come join us next week at the same time, and we're going to do a live stream Q&A about Disney Cruise Line. So thank you so much for joining me today, or if you're watching this video later, thank you for watching. If you're interested in travel content, I have over 525 videos on my channel on all sorts of travel topics, and I have tons more coming out. I have videos finished and uploaded, honestly, that go through the middle of September at this point. We've been doing a lot of traveling lately, so there's lots of good content coming. So if you're interested in travel content, you want to see, I'm in the midst of a whole series on our cruise on Harmony of the Seas on Royal Caribbean, which we just took at the end of May, beginning of June. And then we were at Disney World last week, and those videos are all coming. And now we're going on this trip to Europe here in August, and all those videos are going to be coming. So if you want to make sure you don't miss anything, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the notification bell so you get a notification of each new video when it comes out. I usually put out 2 videos a week, sometimes 3. So you don't want to miss any of them, so make sure you're subscribed. If you liked this live stream and learned something helpful to you, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Thank you, everyone, for coming and watching this today. If I didn't answer your question, be sure to come back next week. We won't just talk about Disney Cruise Line. If you have other travel questions, I will happily answer those as well. Otherwise, leave your questions down in the comments, and I will answer them later. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day and safe travels.